What's up guys, Romsicle here, and this is the Keychron K7, Keychron's latest low-profile 65% keyboard. It's everything you loved about the Keychron K3 but with an even smaller form factor. You still have dedicated arrow keys and the function keys on the right, and all that's gone is the function row up top to save some space. So starting with the exterior, we have the same reinforced aluminum frame found on the updated K3, so it gives the keyboard more rigidity and strength. We still have our USB-C port in the middle and still have the two notch switches on the back for Bluetooth connectivity and OS selection. And on the bottom, there's grippy rubber feet all over the place, and you also have adjustable kickstand feet with two angles of 6 or 9 degrees. The keyboard is already slightly angled, but you'll probably want it at 6 degrees for the best typing angle. And moving back to the top, we have your low profile shine through ABS keycaps. These keycaps have a slight angle to them, so they feel like a regular mechanical keyboard. They have a soft touch plastic on top, so it will definitely be stained with oil or even just wet fingers, while underneath we have the translucent layer for the LEDs to shine through. And underneath we have our switches, with this configuration featuring the Keychron Optical brown switches. And by the way, the K7 Optical version is only compatible with Keychron Optical switches, so no other branded switches will work, so keep that in mind if you're thinking about using other branded switches. And alongside the launch of the K7, we're also getting two brand new optical switches to choose from. We have the bananas and the mint switches, which we have right here to test out. So the bananas and the mint switches are tactile switches, but instead of featuring a pre-travel bump, just like the brown switches, they feature a zero pre-travel bump like Zelios and Boba switches, which I think is a first on these low-profile switches. The mints are also the heaviest switch Keychron provides, and I would definitely say the 67-gram actuation force is too heavy for my fingers, so I would recommend the bananas instead if you want that zero pre-travel bump. And although these switches have an MX stem, getting third-party keycaps will not be possible because if you take a look at the stabilizer keys, the stems are not aligned, so you're out of luck if you want to change the keycaps. So for this K7, I chose to get the Keychron Optical brown switches. And if you guys watched my K3 review, I talked about how it might be more beneficial to have tactile switches than linear switches when it comes to a low profile keyboard. So I decided to test that theory out with my coworkers. So I brought my Keychron K3 to work, and it has lubed linear switches, right? And you can check out the review right here. And surprisingly, all of them are using MacBooks, so this is the best comparison. A MacBook user moving to a Mac compatible or even Mac specific mechanical keyboard. I asked them to use it for a little bit, and the consensus was that the linear switches were not satisfying to type on, and it was the tactile switches that made it feel good. So with a small sample size of 4, I was able to prove my theory to be correct that tactile switches are better than linear switches when it comes to a low profile keyboard. The linear switches just slightly missed the mark of being satisfactory, and when it comes to the brown switches, they are superior when it comes to the low profile keyboards. And as for the mint switches, because they have such a high actuation, they actually kind of feel like linear switches. So if you're interested in having a zero pre-travel tactile bump switch, I would recommend getting the banana switches because they do have the same actuation force as the browns. So you'll probably be able to feel that zero pre-travel bump better than the mint switches. But for heavy-handed people, the mint switches are probably amazing to type on. But let's listen to the sound test. And don't forget, this is the optical version of the K7, which means it is hot swappable, so I can take my switch puller, pull the switches out, and put the new switches in, and we're good to go. I personally don't recommend lubing low profile tactile switches, but if you're interested in learning how to lube your Keychron K7, or want to know what lubed linear low profile switches sound like, check out the video right here. It's the same process as the Keychron K3 but with fewer switches, and I think it's worth your time. So with the Keychron K7 you have 4 defining features. First off, you have your low profile switches. The optical switches are awesome. You've got Bluetooth connectivity of up to 3 devices at once, you've got full compatibility with Mac, iOS, Android, and Windows, and you've got RGB. This keyboard is pretty much targeting Mac users because it's got all the functions and widget keys. You also get extra keycaps for Windows because the default keycaps are for Mac OS. You can also see 2 function keys on the right, with the left function key controlling volume and brightness, while the right function key deals with F1 to F12. And with RGB, your options are endless because you get 18 different lighting effects with controls over speed, color, and brightness. But the LEDs aren't very bright, so don't count on the RGB adding that much to the experience. As for pricing, it's currently in the Kickstarter phase, where $64 would get you the white LED version and you can choose between optical or Gateron switches, and with the $74 version you can get the RGB version with either Gateron or optical switches, so check the link down below. And prices will definitely go up once the Kickstarter ends and ends up on the main site. Now when it comes to the issues surrounding this keyboard, I can only think of 2 things. The first thing is RGB brightness. Even at peak brightness, it's not all that bright, and I think it would be nicer to have brighter LEDs, as well as have a wider font because backlighting is barely visible during the day, and even so at night. The second thing is the missing control key on the right side. As someone who uses Photoshop and Premiere Pro, having control on the right side makes it easier to zoom in and out. But with the K7, they decided to have 2 function keys and no right control. This is a huge deal breaker for me, so I would not recommend this keyboard for anyone who is used to using the right control to zoom in and zoom out on Photoshop and Premiere Pro. It also doesn't help that there's no software to remap the keys. But if you think about it, because this keyboard was made to be fully compatible with Mac OS, the only way that they could include the widgets and the F keys was to have 2 function keys, so that's unfortunate. Keychron also claims that the K7 is the world's first 65% ultra slim wireless mechanical keyboard. But unfortunately, the Dare U EK820 has existed for at least the past 2 years, and its features and slimness is pretty much on par with the K7. As for final thoughts, I still think the Keychron K7 is a pretty good keyboard. It's especially great for those who are transitioning from a Magic keyboard or even a membrane keyboard. But if you're coming from a traditional mechanical keyboard with those full-size switches, this keyboard style might not be for you because you are missing out on that switch travel, which I personally enjoy a lot. But the flexibility of this keyboard is what makes it awesome. Multiple OS support, Bluetooth connectivity, RGB, and lots of switches to choose from. Like seriously, low profile, zero pre-travel tactile bump switches sounds pretty awesome to me. If you're interested in the Keychron K7, it's in its Kickstarter phase, so check the link down below and reserve your piece now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.